So question five, welcome to this session. We're looking at question five as our review focus. So all the videos will be shared with you before 14 entirely. There will be a folder link shared to you for the videos before 14. So for now, let's get straight into it. So looking at question five, part A says that sponsors require a rate of return at least as great as the percentage return they could earn in most nearly comparable investment opportunity. However, in reality, there is no comparable opportunity from which to estimate the required rate of return. So required to mention and briefly explain the factors that determine the required rate of return. So in looking at required rate of return, the major factors that we usually address are things like the risk-free rate beginning. Because as an investor, you require a return that to commensurate the risk that you're taking, right? So when there is no particularly perfectly comparable investment, the factors that now help us in determining our required return is first of all, the return on treasury bills, which is the risk-free rate. The risk-free rate, which is just the return on the investment with zero risk. In this case, treasury bills. So this itself forms a baseline for any required return. The second thing that we look at is the inflation premium. The inflation premium. So now, in the inflation premium, we're trying to maintain purchasing power. So we need to compensate it for the expected inflation. And the third factor that we look at is the risk premium. The risk premium will now look at the additional risk taken in comparison to the risk-free investment. So any risk above the risk-free investment is referred to as a risk premium. So in that case, we're looking at the business risk, which is variability in operations, financial risk, liquidity risk, and other things like geopolitical risk. Fourth, we look at the opportunity cost. This actually reflects the returns foregone in the next best alternative use of the capital invested in this. Number five, we look at the market conditions. We look at the macroeconomic conditions that are prevailing, as well as the market sentiment that can affect the return expectations. And lastly, we look at the firm-specific factors, which look at the risk profile, the duration, the capital intensity, and so on and so forth. Now, let's get into the quantitative aspect of the question. So, part A is only qualitative part in this question.
Okay, sorry, just to take you back.
Yes.
Okay, so when you mentioned about the determination of the return, you mentioned something about the treasury bills. So I just want to connect why you mentioned it.
Okay, so we look at what is called the prevailing risk-free return, right? Risk-free return. The risk-free return. Now, risk-free return is only found in treasury bills. Risk-free return, it's only found in treasury bills. These are the only risk-free investments that we have. They have zero risk. So as a result, we look at the return that they have. So you find this is only included in treasury bills, the risk-free return. So we actually look at these things because we're trying to now look at the measure of return using CAPM. Using CAPM. Because CAPM is equal to your risk-free rate plus your measure of systematic risk multiplied by the market return minus risk-free rate. So the reason why we look at this is because of we want to evaluate the return, which I'm going to look at now next year as we proceed. Yes. But then RRF is only found in the return on government bonds or government treasury bills. Are we okay, sir?
Okay.
Okay. Lovely. Now let's look at part B. Part B says Rocky Mountain Climbing Corporation mining project will utilize only long-term debt and common equity financing. Rocky Mountain has identified similar securities that are traded regularly in active markets. They gather the following information here. So they are ready to risk-free interest rate is 6%. Our common equity beta is 1.25. The expected excess return on market portfolio is 8.4. Cost of debt before tax is 10%. Proportion of debt financing, 60%. The project's marginal income tax rate, 40%. What is the weighted average cost of Rocky Mountain's proposed project? So this is why it gets tricky, right? before we get into this, I want to note down how they're using this. Remember, they're going to combine both long-term debt and equity financing here. They're going to employ both long-term debt and equity financing. So they'll use what is called a capital structure. Because they're employing both long-term debt and equity financing, they'll apply the use of the capital structure. So the capital structure will look like a pie. It will look like a pie. So according to the question, we're told proportion of debt financing is what? 60%. So it means they'll focus on debt financing, 6%, 60%. So I'll say this is the pie, right? It won't go halfway, no. It will go like this. So this element, the 60%, is debt financing. Whereas the remaining 40% is what? Equity financing. Are we clear on the first part here? Are we clear? Are we clear
Yes.
here? Yes, because your work will look at the combination of everything that you have there. So now, in us finding the work, we need to find what? We need to find our equity, cost of equity. Our cost of equity. Cost of equity. Using CAPM. So we employ the use of CAPM here. Because of the risk-free rate are given there. So we say CAPM would be equal to, this is we're finding the return now, the return on equity. The return on equity. Return on equity. So saying CAPM is equal to the risk-free rate plus the common equity beta coefficient, which is the measure of systematic risk, multiplied by your market return minus your risk-free rate. Now, this difference here, this difference you're seeing here is referred to as your market premium, as your risk premium here. This is this part here, from here up until here. This is referred to as your risk premium. Risk premium. Are we clear here? Are we clear?
Yes.
Okay, so how does this look like before I get into it? On our security market index, right? This denotes our risk-free rate. This here denotes our risk-free rate. This one denotes the risk-free rate, right? Whereas this one shows the return of your investment. Now, your market premium is the difference between the market return here, right? And the risk-free rate. So this part is your market premium. So we now have to deduct this and this to get our answer here, this case. Are we okay so far?
That's what I'm following.
Okay, wonderful. Now let's get to finding the cost of equity now. The cost of equity now. So I'll say CAPM return RE is equal to, what's our risk-free rate in the question? Risk-free rate is what? 6% given here. 6%. This is our risk-free interest rate here. So I'm saying 6% plus, what's the beta? Common equity beta? 1.25 multiplied by, now, we already told the excess return on the market portfolio is 8.4%. Excess return on market portfolio 8.4%. So already they've given us what? Our risk premium entirely. So they've already solved this entirely. So this one they've already given to us as what? 8% into 8.4%. It's already given to us before. It's pre-given to us as per the question. So I'm now saying this times 8.4%. So here, we already told this part is 8.4% here. The difference in between this and this. So as a result, this will give us 6 plus 8.4 by 1.25, 8.4 by 1.25, we're getting 10.5 here, 10.5, which will give us 16.5% as our return on equity. 16.5% is our return on equity. Are we okay here? Are we okay?
Okay, so maybe where I just want clarity is on the risk market premium, since they didn't give us a premium, so we take it that the market portfolio, that's the one that we're supposed to put there without subtracting the risk-free rate.
Yes, so you are told it's the excess return on the market portfolio. Excess return. Excess return just looks at the return above the risk-free rate. The return above the risk-free rate. Yes.
Okay, so the catch word is the excess return, the excess word
Yes,
which has been put there.
Exactly, yes. Excess return on market premium. Yes, sir. Are we okay? Are we okay now? All right. Any questions so far up until this point? Any questions at this point? Questions so far?
No question.
All right.
No question from me.
All right. Fasobo, questions, sir?
I'm okay.
Okay, that's wonderful. That's good. That's good. That's good. Now, we need to find our cost of debt, right? Let's go back to the question. We're told the cost of debt, expected cost of debt, pre-tax. The key factor here is pre-tax. Key factor here is what? Pre-tax. That's a key word, pre-tax. Cost of debt in every normal circumstance is subject to a tax shield. When you take out debt, the interest rate you're being charged there is subject to a tax shield. So we say our cost of debt after tax, KD, is going to be equal to your cost of debt multiplied by 1 minus your tax rate. This 1 minus T is your tax shield. So this is going to give us, the cost of debt was given to us as what? 10%, right? So 10 times 1 minus, what's our tax rate? Tax rate is 40%, income tax rate, 40%. So 1 minus 0.4, which will give us 10 by 0.6, which will be equal to 6% as our after-tax cost of debt. Questions? Questions there? No questions?
Clear.
Okay, let's move on now. So with that being calculated, right, as the cost also after-tax cost of debt here, we now need to find, we're already given the weights. We're given the weights, now find the WACC. So our WACC formula, weighted average cost of capital, WACC. General formula is equal to the weight of equity, your investment in equity, percentage investment in equity, proportion of equity, times the return on equity, plus proportion of debt, weight of debt, times the return on debt after tax. So in this case, let's go back to that. Remember what I drew here? I told us initially that equity is what? 0.4, 40%. 40%, which is 0.4 for equity. So I'm saying 0.4 times the return on equity, which was 16.5, plus the weight on debt is now 0.6, times the return on debt after tax, which we find at 6% here, which will give us 0.4 by 16.5. We're getting 6.6 here, plus 0.6 by 6. We're getting 3.6 here, 3.6, which would give us 10.2 as our weighted average cost of capital. So this is just the cost of us investing in this. 10.2 as our weighted average cost of capital, 10.2%. 10.2% as our weighted average cost of capital. So 10.2% is our weighted average cost of capital here. Are we clear? Any questions?
The 6 at the end, How did it come
Yes.
about?
Okay, 6 at the end. Remember I mentioned something here. I said that debt, when you take out a loan, the interest rate on that loan is subject to a tax shield. We're shielded by tax because it now reduces the level of interest we're paying up, right? Now, initially, our cost of debt, we're told, is 10% pre-tax, before tax was 10%. So we multiply by our tax shield. This here signifies our tax shield here. This is the tax shield. So it reduces the cost of debt you're actually paying. So instead of us paying 10% interest rate, we're now going to pay 6% interest rate. So we're saying 10 times 1 minus the corporate tax rate, which was given to us as 40%. So 1 minus 0.4, which is 10 times 0.6, which gives us 6% here. Are we okay? Are we okay,
Yes.
sir?
Mhm.
Okay now? So just like that, we found the
So
weighted
the
average. Yes,
the
go ahead, sir.
0.6.
The
What about the
0.6.
0.6?
Okay, in the beginning of the question, I said something here in the beginning. Look at the question, how it starts here. It's telling us that proportion of debt financing is 60%, right? So
Mhm.
hence the reason why I drew this pie here. So I drew a pie saying that if our debt is 60%, right? It means the remaining part of the proportion is now what? 40%, right? Which will signify equity, because the question does tell us that combining both long-term debt
I've gotten it. It's fine. I've gotten
and
it. It's
equity.
fine.
Yes, sir. Right.
I've got.
Yeah, lovely. So this is how we tackle this question here. Just like that, we're done this question here. We're done part B here. Now let's look at part C. Part C says a loan is repayable in 20 years, right? By level installments of 1,000 per annum, made annually in arrears. Interest is charged at a rate of 5% per annum, effective for the first 10 years, then 7% for the remaining term. So show that the amount of the original loan is 12,000, 33 kwacha, 56 in way. Okay, let's now get to this one. So now, we're given this condition, right? So what we're doing is just proving this. So the first thing that we do in such a question is we find the present value of the first 10 years at 5%. You find present value of the first 10 years at 5%. Find PV at 5%, which in this case is going to be present value of the loan will be now with the payment 1,000 kwacha annual payment. So if you have what is called level installments, these are level installments, periodic payments equal in amount for a particular duration. That's what you refer to as your annuities. So I'm saying 1,000 multiplied by 1 minus 1 plus the rate, which is 5%, now it's just 0.05, subject to the present value. So present value is moving backward in time, so negative t, which is negative 10 years, the first 10 years. So I'm saying PV 10. And all this over the return, which is 0.05 here. So now, at this point, it's now going to be the same concept now, I'm saying the same concept here. So that's going to be 1,000 times what's inside the brackets here. So I'll say 1.05 raised to the power negative 10 will give us 0.6139, 1 minus that answer, and divided by 0.05. Inside you are getting 7.7217 n times 1,000, which will give us 7,721.8 7 here. For the first one, only. Now, this is the 20-year loan. The 20-year loan. But the rate is just changing in the next 10 years. So now the next 10 years, the remaining 10 years, saying PV 20 minus 10 will be equal to 1,000 times 1 minus 1 plus 0.07. The rate has changed 7% now. It's about negative 10 because the last 10 years over 0.07, which will give us saying 1.07 raised to the power negative 10 raised to the power negative 10 and 1 minus divided by 0.07. So say 1,000 times 7.0236, which will give us 7,023.58 or 0.6. Let's put how you are this one. Now, keep in mind, I'll draw a time diagram just to illustrate this. Present value is just like traveling back in time. It's like time travel with money. Future value, present value. So this is our scenario, right? This is our scenario. We're told at the end of 20 years, we'll start receiving 1,000, 1,000, 1,000, 1,000 for a long period of time. So here we have year 10, here we have year 20. The interest rate from here to here is 5%. Here it's 7%, changes of 7%. So the first thing that we did is we are present valuing the payments we're receiving, how much we're going to be receiving. We're bringing it back in time to this point here. That's the first one I'm looking at. That's this one here, the 7th, this one. So when you bring it back in time, you're going to get what? 7,721.7. First one here. Now, the other one is at year 20. At year 20. But the rate is only at 7% for 10 years. So I'm now bringing this one back from year 20 to year 10. So at year 10, it's worth what? 7,023.58. However, that's not the full present value. So what do we do next? We now discount this one all the way back to year 0. So which means now we're going to say 7,023.58 over 1 plus the rate now we use the rate that for the first 10 years is now 0.05, so 0.05, the power negative 10, the power 10 here, which will give us this divided by 1.05 the power 10 to give us 4,311.87. So this is how you present value this on this part here. Now, we then add, now at this point, this amount here is now worth what? 4,311.87. That's how much it's worth at this point now. Starting trying trouble on this one. So we then add the two values. Now we then add the two values. We're now saying this and this now add them, say plus. So if we add these two values, we're saying the 4,311.87 plus 7721.7 to 1.7 So we're going to say this is going to give us 12,033.5698 kwacha. Are we seeing how this is close, the answer? Any questions? So are we seeing how we've shown that the payments I see in the original term is the original loan is the 16. So it means the original loan is what? 12,000, 83 kwacha, 56 in way, give or take, for rounding off. Any questions here?
Okay, I think just show the workings from the 7,721. I got it. Now
Yeah.
I want to see the next one because I'm behind on that one.
Oh, okay.
So for the 7,721. Now the next one.
Okay, so I said here, right? This one.
Yes.
The loan was for 20 years, right? But
So
in the last
what you're indicating? Sorry,
Yes.
just hang on a bit. Just show the screen where you're. So that's PV 20 minus 10, right?
Yes, exactly. The last 10
Then
years.
is equal
of
to
the loan.
1,000.
1,000 times.
Okay.
Yes, the same factor, but then the rate changes to 7% here. Becomes 7%. That's the new rate for the last 10 years now. But I said, keep in mind, once you get this figure here, right? This value that we obtained here, we don't use this value entirely as it is, no. Because this value is a present value at year 10. From 20 years back to year 10, remember, 20 minus 10, up until this point.
Okay.
So we say we then now bring this back to current time. We now bring this all the way back to year 0. We time travel all the way back to year 0 now, which now use this formula I've used here. This one now we use saying where I say PV is equal to future value over 1 plus R to the power n, which will now give us 4,311.87. Now, when you add the two, that's why you get now the 12,033.5698. Are we okay there?
Okay, let me just calculate through.
Okay, sure thing.
Okay, so even if I'm also getting it right, so even if we say to the power -10, we multiply by that figure, it's giving us the same. It's still okay, or
Yes.
maybe it's just a coincidence?
No, it's still okay. It's still okay. It's still okay. It's still okay. Because this formula, right, can be written like this: PV is equal to FV times 1 plus R to the power -n. Same difference, same thing. Are we okay?
Yes, yes.
Okay, any questions so far? Are we now okay so far? I'm glad it's okay now. Are we now okay?
Yes, on my side. I don't know about others.
Mr. Soko-san, are we okay?
We are good.
Okay. Let's proceed now. So we handled the first one, done. So part 2 says the following details. Follow the details of a loan schedule from year X. This means that it's running from X minus 1 years to X. So now, the loan outstanding is given this at year X. Interest paid is here, capital is here. Determine the value of X. Determine the value of X. So here, what are we doing here in this case? This is actually not as hard as it may look like. It's actually quite simple. So all we're doing here is we're just checking the balance. So I say, we're only going to multiply this. So the interest given to us is here, right? We're given the interest here. We're given this here, right? Now, if you look at your interest factors, how do you get interest? We say interest is equal to principal times the rate, right? But we have this interest given to us initially. We're already given the interest. already given the interest paid as the 439.52, or given the interest paid 439.52, the one that's here. Now this is equal to the principal amount. Now the principal amount, outstanding amount, the 8790.48 times R, which is unknown. So therefore, R in this case just be 439.52 over 8790.48. So 439.2 divided by 8790.48. We're getting 0.04999, which is approximately 0.05, which is 5%. 5% as the interest rate. And then if you try checking, you still won't get the same amount of money there. So therefore, if that's the interest rate, right? That's the interest rate for the particular interest period. We now say we find the value of X, right? Moment. So we find the value of EX now. This is the interest paid. So it's a 5% interest rate, 5% interest. So we say we can now find the year, what the balance does with this, right? So using this part here, moment. Just a moment. Just trying to see this part. This is going to work out in our parts. Okay, let's try building a partial amortization schedule for this one. So I was saying when amortizing interest is equal to balance times your, in this case, 5%, just 0.05, 5%, which you found here.
Okay, first maybe I'm lost. So what are we trying to find? Of course, we found the interest rate, which is at 5%.
Yes,
but
we're
again,
trying to find the year. We're trying to find the year.
Okay.
What year is it in? What year is this value in? So we do so
or
by
the year where
building
we are disbalancing.
Exactly. So we're trying to build a partial amortization schedule. Yes. So what we're trying to do in this case now. So now, if this is our formula, right? Without say, the other one is going to be capital repayment, right? So capital repayment will be equal to your installment minus interest. Now, therefore, at that point, the new balance, NB, will be equal to old balance minus our capital repayment, So at this point now, let's try building a partial amortization schedule. A partial amortization schedule in this case for this one.
Okay, maybe before you go further. Hello?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, go back to where we've started doing the calculation.
Okay, here, yes.
What's that? Interest is equal to what? Just after the 5% below.
Okay. Oh, here, balance times 5%.
Yeah. So interest is equal to balance times 5%.
Yes, exactly. We're just trying to evaluate this one directly. So it's dependent. Keep in mind, this one is dependent on the previous balance you found.